Eve is the primary carer of her 3 grandchildren.
Well, they were 4 and 5 years old. One was due to start school, the other one was at preschool, and the youngest one was 1 and a baby. So she was the one that needed the nappy changes in the middle of the night, the formula bottles, all the stuff that you think you've forgotten, lost all those years ago suddenly reappear.
Grandparent care is overtaking foster care. There are up to 65,000 grandparent carers in Australia.
If we were retired properly, we would probably be in a camper van somewhere grey nomading around, but that's not the case.
7 years ago, Eve received her grandchildren from Protective Services. Her daughter, the mother of the children, has been in and out of mental care ever since.
It's very traumatic, the whole thing, because you're in the process also of losing a daughter. It's absolutely draining, and it also really destabilises the children, because she'd turn up and say, oh, well, you'll be coming with me shortly, and, you know, everything will be rosy and you'll be coming to live with me. And because we're saying you're not going anywhere to the kids.
There are no mental health services for grandparent families. Custody arrangements set families apart. Eve no longer speaks to her daughter, and the grandchildren see their mother once a week under supervised visits.
The difficulties arise particularly when the children have behavioural disorders. And we've got one with behavioural disorders, we've got another one that's going through puberty at the moment. And
When Eve's granddaughter began hitting her siblings, Eve contacted the public hospital, but the waiting list was too long. She used her retirement savings to take her granddaughter to a private psychologist.
I would really, really like to see a comprehensive diagnosis for the whole family right from the jump, and the treatment right from the jump.
Grandparents feel underappreciated for their role and blamed for the abusive behaviour of their own children.
People say, oh well, they've just probably thinking they can raise the children better than their daughter. That's not the case. Grandparents don't do this because they think they can do a better job. They want to go off and have their retirement. They are doing it because these children are in danger. In danger.
Karen helps Eve run a support group in Morisset. Grandparents are not formally recognised in legislation. Finding legal and financial help is complex. For many, support groups are the first point of contact.
Support groups actually are the only mental health opportunities they get to help improve their well-being, to actually talk to people who are walking in their shoes.
Absolutely, absolutely. When things aren't going our way or the children's behaviour isn't bad, there are times when you just feel that everybody in the world wants to criticise everything you're doing. So it was very nice occasionally when someone says you're doing a good job.
85% of children in grandparent care come from drug-addicted parents. Unlike foster care, grandparents do not receive training to deal with emotionally disturbed children.
Grandparents have huge issues to deal with, and a lot of them are cracking. A lot of them are so stressed. As I said, a stroke, we've had one with a heart attack, we've had one came to me last week in our local area and said, I can't do this anymore.
Everyone has their own basket.
Last month, a federal inquiry gave 18 recommendations for grandparent carers. For Eve, this is a cause for celebration. Counselling services are set to improve with special attention to grandchildren affected by trauma. But Karen is still concerned.
There is no authority anywhere that looks after informal carers. But these grandparents who are not under the radar of any government authority are doing all this on their own.
Under the recommendations, informal carers are given legal help and a foster care allowance. But Karen says grandparents are not willing to speak up.
Grandparents can also be fearful of government authorities. Some of them think they're too old and won't be granted the children, and they'll never see them again. So they say nothing. And I've found grandparents in dire poverty.
The inquiry plans for a national phone survey to identify informal carers. Grandparents fear confrontation, especially if the parents of the children are still receiving financial benefits. Eve says too many prefer to go it alone.
It means queuing up for food vouchers, it means getting everything you've got at the Salvation Army store.
The recommendations are not final and will be passed on to the Council of Australian Governments for further discussion.
I have a lot of confidence personally that a lot of this will be implemented, because I don't know who's going to implement it and I don't know where the funding will come from to do it.
The difference between state and federal laws makes grandparent care a complex topic.
I think government departments would be horrified to read this report. They already can't fund statutory care. How anyone can imagine they can now provide informal kinship carers with the same foster care allowance, even though I think it's a good idea, that they get, it's not going to happen.
Eve says grandparents need changes now.
I don't think they're all going to happen overnight with a wave of the magic wand, and it will be up to the grandparents to get in touch with their parliamentarians and say, please don't forget us, we want these. We know it's going to cost money, but it'll cost you a lot more later on if you don't do it now.